Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Wingecarribee Shire Council on Wednesday, 4 May. We've got quite a few members of staff here today, most of whom I think I know, and some consultants and residents, and thank you for coming. I would remind everybody to make sure their mobile phones are turned off, please, or on silent. Acknowledgement of Country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledge the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders both past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present or watching today. The Council Prayer. Let us meet in this council chamber in a spirit of fellowship and goodwill to represent all members of the community in its cultural and religious diversity, to be honest and objective in all our deliberations, to respect the view of residents, the rights of all to express their opinions without fear or favour, and to make decisions for the common good of the community. Listed on the business paper is also the Council's statement of ethical obligations. Obviously there's no apologies. I will deal with the minutes of the meeting held on 20 April at the next ordinary meeting of the Council. I think it's more appropriate to deal with minutes of meetings at ordinary meetings. Declarations of interest, General Manager.
There are none, Mr. May.
There is no interim administrator minute as it's an extraordinary meeting. I indicated previously that this meeting would be dealt with in Committee of the Whole. So accordingly, in accordance with Section 373 of the Local Government Act, I move that Council resolves into Committee of the Whole to consider items 9.1 and 9.2 as detailed on the agenda and declare that carried. For those who possibly don't understand exactly what we're doing, the idea of Committee of the Whole is to make it much less formal, and I believe in preference to workshops and briefings, Committee of the Whole is a far more appropriate way to deal with matters. Obviously, any decisions taken at committee will have to be ratified by Council, and we will more than likely do that at this meeting. The first item listed is 9.1, Community and Recreation Facilities Strategy Progress Report. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Acting Director, Service and Project Delivery, Mr. Bray, will introduce this item and then followed by a short presentation by the consultants from Treadwell Management Services who are preparing the strategy.
Thank you, General Manager. The Community and Recreational Facility Strategy. The purpose of this report is to provide Council with an update on the progress of the preparation of the Community and Recreational Facility Strategy and the next steps in the preparation of the draft strategy. Council is preparing the Community and Recreational Facility Strategy as one integrated document, and the intent of this strategic approach is to ensure best use of community funds in the delivery of local, district and regional facilities and services. Treadwell Management Services were engaged in January 2022 to prepare the Community and Recreational Facility Strategy. They are close to completing Stage 1, Project Information and Analysis, and Stage 2, Community Consultation. The outcomes of these reports will be presented separately. The preparation of the draft Community Recreational Strategy is progressing, and the draft is on track to be received by Council by the 1st of August 2022. The presentation summarising the progress to date will be presented tonight by Neil Treadwell, Managing Director of Treadwell Management Services. I'll ask Neil to come up.
Okay, jump to the first slide.
You push a button, magic button.
Every microphone's different. Project aim is to prepare a community and recreation facility strategy, known as the CRFS, which is to develop an integrated strategic approach to plan for future community and recreational facilities across the Shire. So that came straight from the brief. A large component of the strategy development is obviously engaging the community. We did an extensive consultation process, primarily over March and into April, which engaged hundreds of community members in the process. One of the main components of that was the community survey, which received over 533 responses from the community, which, based on similar strategies that we've done in the past, is a huge number. So there's obviously a lot of interest in the strategy and its development. We also ran a number of face-to-face drop-in sessions or workshop type scenarios. We also held a number of online virtual meetings as well, which had some good attendances. And we did a club survey and organisational survey as well, which we had had 38 responses. And they came from a whole range of different sports and community activities, from netball, cricket, soccer, model aeros, archers, butterfly associations and so forth. So a whole wide-ranging cross-section of the community was part of that. We've done some one-on-one consultations with staff. We just had a staff workshop recently. We've talked to a number of the peak bodies and some groups that have, projects that are earmarked for future development or proposals as well. So that'll be ongoing as we work up the strategy. Thank you. In terms of the emerging consultation findings, there was a lot of interest around things like play spaces, creating there are a lot of playgrounds and play spaces in the Shire, but they're very sort of basic. So looking at, high level type play, adventure type playgrounds and nature play, things like that. And, creating sort of some larger destination type playgrounds. Aquatics obviously came up strongly, obviously with the current scenario with the Mittagong pool being closed. There's some ageing facilities as well, and then having the Mosfale aquatic facility as well. So there was definitely interest in the future of how the aquatics will be provided in the Shire going forward. There was a fair bit of interest around the indoor stadium as well, around providing multi-use and improved indoor courts, plus additional capacity for a whole range of sports. But basketball certainly came through strongly as well. There was interest in the skate parks. The Shire has 4 skate parks at the moment. Some are quite dated and dysfunctional. So there was definitely some community interest in that in terms of improving those and upgrading them. There's a whole range of sort of niche ideas and activities that came through. The tennis courts themselves, there's a lot of tennis courts throughout the Shire. However, a lot of sort of at that stage of life where they need renewing or improving due to their surfaces deteriorating, etc. There was some comments around the theatre space and the need for improved programming. A big thing that came through was around connections to facilities, so being able to walk and cycle to facilities rather than having to drive there. We're involved with the council's walking strategy a couple of years ago, and there was certainly a lot of interest in those, both inter-town connections but also through the townships themselves to from key residential areas to key facilities. Certainly interest in providing additional activities for young people, particularly of that sort of teenage age bracket, with people moving into the area, young families, etc. There was a lot of requests for facilities for young people and services. And that sort of leads into things like mountain bike trails, which are very popular now, and things like pump tracks and sort of catering for that informal, unstructured activity, which has becoming more and more popular in communities across Australia. There was certainly an interest in creating sort of community hubs, so where you can combine different services and facilities, and council has a lot of sort of ageing infrastructure, and there's an opportunity there to look at ways forward in terms of integrating potentially some of those single-purpose facilities into multi-purpose community hubs, even in some of the smaller villages. And there was a need for improved changing room facilities, particularly for females, with the popularity of some of the female sports increasing as well. Thank you. So just quickly, we did an audit of all the facilities.
But can I ask you questions
Sure.
now or later?
Yeah, now that's fine.
Just in relation to, we go back to the other slide, emerging consultation findings, has a regional stadium, has that been raised with you? Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
I just want to, so that those people have been speaking.
We've had a good discussion with Mosfale Basketball Association.
No, that's the indoor stadium. There was a plan when I arrived for Lackey Park. Is it Mosfale, Lackey Park, over that way? And there was a dream, I think it was more towards NRL
Stadium,
than rugby. I've got to say that I would never build a regional football facility for NRL. For the occasional games, you've got to pay them any rate to come. But has that been raised with you at all?
Well, I've only just picked it up through reading through that study that was done for Lackey Park, which had the plans for that regional stadium. A few stakeholders have mentioned it, but it hasn't sort of come through strongly to date. So maybe they've, that was a few years ago, wasn't it, that was proposed?
No, it wasn't.
Recently.
As I understand it. Who's the officer who can help me?
Through Mr. Maid and Mr. Bray. Yep.
That's the beauty of Committee of the Whole. We can take our time and we can flush things out.
Yeah.
Thank you, John Ranger. Yes, it was proposed, and I think it went through. It was late last year. I think it went through, and the project was withheld, and so it wasn't. It's not a old project by any means. It's definitely a newer project. Yes.
So can you give Mr. Treadwell some information to make sure that he's aware? I'm not suggesting that we do it. I'm waiting to see what the experts come up with.
It definitely
was raised.
It was definitely in the plans as part of that feasibility study, which linked to the indoor stadium for the basketball. So it was sort of a combined facility that linked in basketball and other indoor sports and cricket and other field sports for that whole precinct. So it was part of that broader study, but then I think basketball thought, well, it might not get off the ground if we go down that path. So they're going down more the line of just having the indoor stadium proposal, which would just be indoor courts, not a outdoor sporting stadium for field sports and things like that. So, because they're obviously dead keen on getting their courts.
Oh, look, I understand that, but also I think there were certain councillors, suspended councillors now, who were very keen on a regional sports facility and who invested a lot of time, and I don't think we can just jump over it. I think you need to have the information given to you about that. And of course there's also Erridge Park, which is not what I would call a first-class regional facility. However, it did attract, I don't know what they call them these days in rugby. Sorry?
I think it attracted a couple of country championships and also
they attracted the Waratahs played Canberra, which is a big crowd there.
Yeah.
But they're just. I'm just hoping that you're picking up on those things. Anyhow, I apologise, but I just
that was really sort of from the general community consultation, but reading through some of those background documents, that was certainly in there. And part of the study is to look into those three sort of components, one being the regional stadium. Yeah, if you can just flick through. So, yeah, undertaking the audit, this sort of just demonstrates the diversity of facilities that council provides. These are all the existing facilities. As you can see, there's a whole different range of types there, from aquatic facilities through to skate parks and golf courses, and a whole range of community halls out there in the various townships as well. Thank you. This is sort of the last summary slide. I'm trying to pick up on some of the key challenges and opportunities to address as part of the strategy. Obviously, aquatic and swimming pool provision is important and a key, major assets for local government that need to be well planned. The demand for outdoor and informal recreation and community activities is increasing, and obviously people value that in moving to this sort of region and having those opportunities. There are many ageing and dysfunctional and low quality facilities out there that might have been built 60, 70 years ago, particularly in some of the smaller villages, but even in some of the major towns. So I guess there's an opportunity there to look at the future provision and whether some of those can be integrated, as I said before, into more sort of multi-purpose facilities. The support facilities as well at a lot of the grounds and precincts are fairly low quality, things like change rooms and that, very, very basic and not very inviting. We need to obviously cater for an ageing and growing population, so a lot of sport is played by young people, and the stats prove that, but there's also an active ageing population that we need to make sure we're providing for, and all the different alternative activities. Balancing which sort of goes back to our discussion just before, balancing the needs of community level sport versus the elite sports, so your stadiums and your high-end, high-performance type environments. And there's a place for all those things, but it's getting that hierarchy right. Guidance for facilities and open spaces in, obviously, the new developing areas is important to make sure that they've got adequate facility provision. Formalising the connectivity for the active transport. There was a lot of comments around and a lot of feedback around being able to access facilities without necessarily having to drive, so having good pedestrian connections and bikeways and things like that. Addressing the sort of ageing and basic play spaces and looking at the opportunity to provide something more sophisticated and attractive for young people. Balancing the provision for the traditional activities that are, have been provided for by local governments for many years, but there's also a lot of emerging activities like your mountain biking and hiking and trail running and things like that that people are looking to local governments to provide going forward. Encouraging active lifestyles, particularly again with the ageing population. That need for that regional level facility provision, so you've got some of that higher level facility provision that can cater for bigger events and so forth, which can generate a lot of economic activity for communities as well. Council has a number of childcare and kindergarten facilities, and what's the role in that going forward? Attraction of events, which I just touched on before, I think is a real opportunity where you can draw in sort of, lots of participants, and your community being a sort of a popular tourist destination as well has the accommodation to, I guess, cater for large events. The geography of the Shire with lots of villages and some larger towns in close proximity to each other is quite different to a lot of other communities. We have worked in similar ones, but it is, presents its own challenges with having, a lot of smaller villages and towns and so forth. The accessibility came through quite strongly, even physical access to some of the facilities, given their actual, their ageing profile, and they don't have the physical built structures to assist people getting into and out and using those facilities, and catering for popularity of informal and unstructured activities, and also the increasing cost not only of providing services but providing, quality public infrastructure, particularly facilities, is at the moment going through the roof. But hopefully that settles down in the next few years. But they're probably the key challenges and opportunities at this stage. I think that's a quick summary, 10-15 minutes. So did you want to have any more questions or discussion?
Yeah, I've got a few questions, if you don't mind. In relation to your consultations, you've obviously been talking to community organisations.
Yep.
And I know there's nothing on the council's website where there's no community organisations manual where people can just, or am I wrong? I can't find it. Is there a community organisations manual where people can just go in and look for a soccer club where they live and that kind of stuff? And updated? Anyhow, it's just something I might raise it and I aim in it, but I think, council should have that kind of stuff publicly available to make it easier for people. But obviously you've been given names of who to talk to, but can anybody off the street make an appointment and come and have a chat to you about issues they may want to raise? Is that opportunity been given?
Yeah, well, we had the open drop-in sessions and virtual workshops where people that was promoted widely for people to contribute. But I'm happy to take any sort of submissions. If we've had a couple of people, and Susan's forwarded information that's come through council from different, groups or individuals with ideas about recreation, infrastructure or community facilities. So we've probably received 7 or 8 of those proposals as well. But we've got some great information in the community survey.
Yeah.
And as I said, an excellent response.
I just look, the reality is, and you've worked with councils before, sometimes you've got to go looking for them.
Yeah.
They won't come to you.
Yep.
But many people have great ideas. And unless you can find them, you'll never know about them.
No, that's
but
right.
They'll have their say when it's all too late. So that's all part of the process, which I hope you're covering. The audit, you're doing a condition audit of everything that we've got as part of this process, because I see here on page 9 of the business papers, many local facilities are tired and ageing and barely functional. I don't think that would be something that Wingecarribee only faces. I think
No, it's a common scenario across local government.
Because look, the reality is the casualty of rate picking is infrastructure. And there's not enough money spent on infrastructure. And so will you be coming in your report naming and shaming this crook stuff?
Well, we're certainly looking at it from a high level in terms of general conditions. So council staff have also done some work previously around assessing the physical condition. We're certainly considering that the general condition, but also the functionality is important as well. In terms of having a quality facility, it needs to be, suitable and fit for purpose for the users as well.
Yeah, but you're fresh eyes in the process, whereas the council, and this is no reflection on the staff, but they may think it's adequate.
Yep.
But your professional view is when you compare it to other councils, no, it's not.
Yeah,
or you're over servicing.
Yeah.
So that kind of scenario will come out of this process.
Yeah, and we've visited every facility. So we've been out to all the villages and seen every single facility. So you've got a real diversity of facilities. Some good ones as well. They're not all bad. They're all,
I'm not saying that.
Some are very good.
But but I think the expectation of some that you can bicycle and walk is unrealistic when you look at this shire with villages and locations and even townships. I've had a letter from somebody yesterday suggesting that I walk from Mosfale to Barrel and see how I go, whether I survive it. I might try it actually. Yeah. But that there's accessibility problems, which is where you're addressing that. The council is addressing that in another report work that's being done at the moment.
Yep.
Any of the staff got any questions they want to ask of the consultant? Or okay, thank you very much for that.
Cheers.
In relation to that, for a recommendation to council, I would move that the officer's recommendation be adopted, and Mr. Treadwell be thanked for his presentation. And I will declare that carried in committee, but obviously it's going to have to be dealt with in council, because at Wingecarribee, committees don't have delegations, as I understand it. Okay, yeah, feel free to, yeah. Yeah, well, the next one's the main event. Sorry. Thanks very much. General Manager, the draft operational plan and budget.
Thank you, Mr. May. As outlined in our roadmap to moving forward, we're taking a back-to-basics approach over the coming 3 years.
Excuse me, can I just answer them? We're not enclosed, so you've got to leave the doors open if you don't mind. I know why. The noise out there before, but it's an open meeting.
Deal with the noise. Okay. As outlined in our roadmap to moving forward, we're taking a back-to-basics approach over the coming 3 years. The focus at present is on refocusing on the future, reinvigorating our organisation and rebuilding. As part of the reinvigorating our organisation, we are currently undertaking phase 2 of our restructure, which is due to be in place mid-year. As part of this, there will be some functional realignment. This means that there will be some functions and service areas that will move between different managers. Once the structure is confirmed, the managers will then be working with their teams to look at their services to ensure we're offering best value in what we do. As a result, the draft 2022/23 operational plan and budget has been largely focused on business as usual, with the exception of our roads. The draft provides for increased investment in our roads, including $1.3 million for an additional pothole crew, and just over $27 million in roads, bridges and school safety and pedestrian crossing improvements. This includes the commencement of renewal of the Old South Road. In terms of refocusing on the future, what's proposed in the draft operational plan budget is the completion of the community and recreational facility strategy. We'll be completing the integrated transport strategy, completing the Bowral master plan, completing the residential and medium density housing strategies, which are just commencing, as well as completing the major design work for the Mosfale Bypass. These initiatives are about having a clear strategy for the future and shovel-ready projects to take advantage of great grant opportunities as they arise. In terms of rebuilding projects, we will see the completion of the $6.5 million Bowral Memorial Hall, which will provide a contemporary cultural facility, completion of works at the sale yards to the value of $5.25 million, commencement of the new animal shelter, commencement of the Bong Bong Common, first phase, with a total value of $3 million, with assistance in state government funding. Investment in Hilltop, with projects associated with the Loopline, including the viewing platform, and a focus on place-based projects building on the outcomes of the executive listening tours, the newly created Place Liaison Officer role, and the work around the Robertson Place Plan. In summary, the draft operational plan and budget is responsible, takes into consideration that we are in the process of complex change and dealing with legacy issues, stabilising our operations and refocusing on the future, responds to the community feedback about the need for greater focus and investment in our road infrastructure, aligns us with indexation and CPI, and provides for the 0.8% rate adjustment to ensure that service levels are consistent with the long-term financial plan as adopted by the previous council. I'll now hand over to the Chief Financial Officer, the Manager Assets and the Group Manager Committee and Corporate Services to provide further detail. Thank you, Mr. Kuzmanowski.
Thank you. Just an introduction to the report, just to dive into some specifics before we go into the presentation. So, excuse me. The draft 22-23 operational plan and budget and draft 22-23 fees and charges schedule have been prepared collaboratively over the past few months with a view of publicly exhibiting for 28 days subject to a council resolution. In preparing the draft 22-23 budget and operational plan, council officers have incorporated additional information into the operational plan, including the 21-22 and 22-23 budgets for comparative purposes and resource allocations by services. The detailed draft 4-year capital works budget has also been appended to the draft 22-23 operational plan. Some key points of the draft 22-23 operational plan include total operating expenditure of $126 million, which has been allocated to provide services to the community and maintaining vital...
Can you slow down? Sorry.
Sorry. Total operating expenditure of $126 million has been allocated to provide services to the community and maintaining vital infrastructure to ensure the public safety is provided. $69.8 million worth of capital works program. With the easing of the COVID-19 pandemic, pre-COVID revenue levels have been forecast for the 22-23 financial year and service levels restored. In response to the natural disasters that have plagued the LGA since February 22, an allocation of $1.3 million per annum has been prioritised to expand pothole maintenance crews for the next 3 years, funded by the deferral of building capital works. It is envisaged that the delivery of over $50 million in capital roads, capital infrastructure over the next 3 financial years will see a likely decrease for requirement in pothole maintenance once the capital program is completed. It is proposed to review the additional road maintenance crew beyond 3 years when preparing the 25-26 draft operational plan. From a revenue perspective, rates are proposed to be increased by 1.2%, subject to a further rates correction of 0.8% subject to IPART determination. The total 2% rate increase will align to Council's adopted long-term financial plan, and the rates correction will generate an additional $425,000 in rates revenue to fund existing services. Both 1.2% and 2% rating scenarios have been tabled in the draft operational plan. If Council is unsuccessful in receiving the additional 0.8%, Council will need to reprioritise budget allocations to fund the shortfall. Fees and charges are now being proposed to be increased by 4.4%. This is to align to the annual March 22 All Sydney's Consumer Price Index released in late April. With the escalating costs of materials and contracts, it is financially prudent to ensure that Council keeps pace with inflationary measures to offset the increasing operating and capital costs currently being experienced. Domestic waste charges have been increased by 5% to capture the forecasts increase in waste-related costs. This now closely aligns to the revised CPI figures released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. The proposed water and sewer charges have also been proposed to be increased by 4.4% to align to the March 22 All Sydney Consumer Price Index. The index revenue will be used to partially cover the increasing operational costs in providing these services to the community. Council is also investing $189 million in water and sewer infrastructure over the next 4 years, and as a part of the proposed revenue increase, the Water and Sewer Fund will need to replenish cash reserves to recover the depreciation for future asset replacements. In addition to this, the proposed capital upgrade works will be partially funded by loans. The proposed increase in fees and charges will also be used to partially fund the foreshadowed interest rate increase currently being experienced in the financial markets. From a financial perspective, Council's accounting operating result is projected to be a deficit of $2.5 million, excluding capital grants and contributions, whilst delivering a balanced cash budget. It is also forecast that Council will have a working capital position of $5 million as at the end of 30 June 2023. The next steps will see community engagement commencement upon Council resolving the release of the operational plan documents for public consultation. Thank you.
I hold my questions till the end, do I? I think it might be the best way to do it because I've got a lot.
Okay, no problem. That's fine. All right, we might kick off with the presentation. So that was just a summary of the key points of the budget as outlined and tabled in the report as the attachment of the operational plan. So we might start with the presentation if that's okay. So from our perspective, we've gone through some of this as we had a councillor briefing a couple of weeks ago. So most of this information will be a regurgitation of that with some updated information as we've worked through finalising the budget. So without further ado, I'll kick off and then hand over to my counterpart Sean to talk about capital works. So again, just for your purposes, Mr. Interim Administrator, we have prepared the operational plan in accordance with the IPNR framework. In addition to that, we've also attached the draft long-term financial plan to the council report as well, giving us a 10-year projection of our financial position. Next. So as you can see, the long-term financial plan and how it's to be used is the operational plan. Year one of the operational plan aligns to year one of our long-term financial plan. As we move out through the long-term financial plan, the figures, the assumptions become a bit more rubbery as we go on. It's a bit hard to do some of the crystal balling with some of the figures, but we make our decisions based on the information we have available at the time. Next. So just to give a summary and recapping some of the information that I've spoken about in the introduction, again, we have prepared the budget to align to business as usual, noting that we have put an increased pothole maintenance crew of $1.3 million over the next 3 financial years. There are no COVID financial implications factored into the budget for the 22-23 year. We have provided a $5 million working capital position, so that is your rainy day fund for council to have just in case there's an emergency. This was off the back of an audit recommendation. Again, just recapping, a draft capital budget of $69.8 million, fees and charges generally indexed by 4.4% to align to inflation, and a current cash position, our current cash position of our general fund, water fund and sewer fund are all balanced. So that means we're not spending money we don't have. Next. Just back one, sorry. So some of the core assumptions that we've set with the budget is a rates peg of 1.2, and as we've discussed, IPART initially set the rate peg at 1.2%. IPART and the Office of Local Government have subsequently allowed councils to align their rates peg increase to their adopted long-term financial plan. So again, council's adopted long-term financial plan had an increase of 2%. So council officers have gone through the process of submitting those. They did close at the end of April, 29th of April. So we've submitted our application for the additional special rate variation for that rating correction. Again, fees and charges, 4.4%, tying into inflation to align to inflationary measures. So again, if we don't increase by inflationary measures, we're essentially shifting the financial burden into future years where eventually we will need to catch up, and we're just shifting that indexation to make it a future problem. Hence the recommendation of changing the indexation to 4.4% to align to current inflationary measures. Domestic waste charge increased by 5%, and again, domestic waste charges as an industry are increasing higher than standard inflation. So again, we've captured that. Again, any revenue generated from the domestic waste charge will go back into the domestic waste reserve. Salaries and wages being one of our largest expense items, we have an award increase of 2%. Also a statutory increase in superannuation from 10 to 10.5%, and a workers' comp premium increase of $600,000 in what we're forecasting based on the information we have available today. Operating expenditure has been increased by 2% unless justified by contract or it is a prescribed expense. So as a part of this process, to put some rigour around the budget process, we've asked our managers to go through and validate some of their inflationary expenditure against some of their prescribed contracts. Again, just reiterating the point that our general fund, water fund and sewer fund are balanced. What that means is we are not spending money we don't have across our operational plan and our long-term financial plan. Next. Just again, income statement by fund. So this is one for the accountants there. If there's any there, this is one that we need to prepare as a statutory requirement. Essentially, we are looking at this just, I guess, portrays how we need to disclose our revenue and our expenses in accordance with accounting standards. Next. Just an update on the council cash reserves. So at the April council meeting, we put a policy on public exhibition for cash reserves. Again, this was off the back of an internal audit recommendation that council revisits its reserves, and as disclosed up there, the statutory reserves will remain the same, but we've consolidated a number of internal reserves from 34 to 15 to help us manage, to help the finance team and council manage its funds more effectively. Next. Investing in our future, the SRV, we just wanted to demonstrate where the special rate funds were being allocated to for the 22-23 financial year. So looking at those asset classes, we've put them in by asset class, so roads, drainage, recreation and buildings. Next. Just in summary, the interim administrator requests that have come through council resolutions, and these are here, the $1.3 million pothole crew, Penrose Hall, picnic tables at Wingello and Hilltop Park projects as well. Just to highlight some of the risks that we've gone through as a part of this project, part of this process in building the 22-23 budget. The salaries and wages, which is our largest expense, has been indexed double that of what the initial rates indexation was. So essentially we were looking at around about a 2% increase plus a superannuation, a 2.5% increase in our salaries and wages. IPART initially determined a 1.2% increase, so made our job pretty hard in trying to get the budget to where it was. Again, we've put no contingencies for further COVID impacts if they eventuate in the 22-23 financial year, so we will deal with those through the quarterly review process. Inflationary pressures may have further impacts on estimated costs for services and capital works. So as we know, CPI is heading north and we need to manage that and keep an eye on that to make sure that our contracts and our budgets align to what we've budgeted for. Throughput and revenue at the SRLX may be impacted through the recent floods, so just a lag effect of the floods. Flood cleanup will continue in 22-23, so we don't, again, we're trying to get to how much that's going to cost and how long is that piece of string. So there will be implications in both the operating budget from a maintenance perspective, but also a capital budget impact as well. Insurance costs will likely increase due to the floods and number of claims in future years. So again, we are working with our insurers to try quantify what our insurance costs may look like heading forward as well. And lastly, just a risk is the future funding strategy for the Wellbeing Tip rehabilitation. We need to work on that internally as well. Next. Just a quick update on the long-term financial plan. We have, as a part of coming back here, the extraordinary council meeting, it was recommended that we attach our long-term financial plan to our operational plan. So we've worked on that, and the finance team have worked on preparing the long-term financial plan. We've prepared two scenarios. One is just the business as usual and an extrapolation over 10 years. And the second one is council not being successful in receiving the 0.8 rates correction and what that does over the 10 years, which is essentially a $4.8 million reduction in services over those 10 years. We have forecast the LTFP as per requirements over the 10 years, and we have incorporated some benchmarks that are mandated by the Office of Local Government as a part of building the long-term financial plan. I'll hand over to Sean now, and he'll continue on. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. May and General Manager. I'm Sean Robinson. I'm the Manager of our Assets Branch, and I'll just run us through what our proposed program is for 22-23. Like the General Manager mentioned, we are in a rebuild reset phase of council, but we do still have an ageing asset base to renew and to maintain, and we have strategies and servicing strategies to implement across the Shire. So we do have a large program across the 4 years of almost $300 million. About 2/3 of that is focused on our water and sewer networks. And so the task ahead of us is really large, but I think it is quite exciting because the projects will have a really tangible impact for our community. We have a lot of slides, so we'll try and race through them all. So I guess to kick off for 22-23, for our buildings asset class, we have just under $6 million forecast for investment. The major projects in that space are for Bower Memorial Hall, Southern Highlands Animal Shelter, and the Regional Livestock Exchange. So for Bower Memorial Hall, the total budget is $6.5 million. Our allocation for 22-23 is $3.1 million, and this will be the completion of the project as well. It has been a really tricky project, trying to balance what is essentially the full refurbishment of the building, achieving structural accessibility, fire safety, and BCA compliance works, as well as doing functional and usage upgrades to the space. And so trying to balance the acoustic qualities of, achieving acoustic upgrades for unamplified music while still delivering a multi-purpose facility. And so both of these will have some budget impacts on the projects, but all notwithstanding, the project is forecast for completion next year. Next up, we have the Southern Regional Livestock Exchange, total budget of $5 million, and the final component of the works to be complete next year with $1.2 million allocation. The project originally had the 6 fundamental objectives. Of those 4 have been completed, and so the task for next year is to finish off the installation of the main lift to the ring, as well as the livestock yard upgrades. Through the delivery of this project, it is, as part of the business case, forecast for there to be a significant increase in, the throughput of livestock sales, which will be great. And our third major project in the buildings class is the Southern Highlands Animal Shelter. Total investment of just under $4 million, with conservatively, it phased with $1 million for next year, with completion the year after. The project is on track for the combined design and DA for both the animal shelter and the SES facility to be submitted within the month. Construction funding for the SES building is still a bit of a work in progress, looking at potential options and grant funding opportunities there, but nonetheless we are on track for the commencement of the animal shelter for next year. As well as the major projects, we also have just over $600,000 spread across renewals and upgrades of our community and public amenities network across the Shire as well, those which are described there. On to open spaces and cemeteries. So we have $3.7 million forecast for next year. Major projects being our Bongbong Common, Stage 1B, Mosfale Cemetery Master Plan, continued investment in our play spaces around the Shire, and the progression of the Hilltop Loopline lookout through its design phase. So Bongbong Common, Stage 1B, as part of the approved master plan, there's 3 stages that were endorsed. So this is looking for the delivery of Stage 1A is currently in progress with a tender engaged for the formalisation of the car park just off there to the eastern side of Mosfale Road. Stage 1B will see the delivery of the loop line in the eastern side, as well as the riverside lookout platforms on the western side, interpretive signage, and then hopefully a play space as well. So total investment will be $3 million, funded from the New South Wales Public Spaces Legacy Program, but that will be phased across the 2 years, given that it will need to go through design and DA phase. We then have the Mosfale Cemetery Master Plan implementation, total investment just under $2 million, the majority of which is phased for next year, but completion will be in 23-24. Primary objectives being formalisation of the access road and an internal sort of loop road with drainage works and some additional park amenity through park furniture in the reserve. Our place-based renewal program, so we're looking to do an investment of $200,000 in the continual renewal of our play spaces across the Shire. What is, I guess, intended or flagged for this one is, I guess, upon consideration of place-based projects that have been either completed or are in progress across the Shire, we've done quite well in spreading that across the network, with the exception of our northern villages. And so the intention would be to invest this one ideally for the renewal of Waratah Park in Hilltop, which is currently closed due to its condition. I guess the one complexity that we are working through is that with the advent of the Heritage Rail Loopline through those areas, and with the receipt of the Black Summer Bushfires Recovery Grant by the Hilltop Community Association, there is what I'm terming the Hilltop Loopline Park to be developed. And so it's just thinking through how to best, I guess, deliver that place-based renewal for Hilltop, i.e. is the funding split between Waratah Park and Hilltop Park, or is it consolidated within one of those two options? With that, there is additional complexities because the Hilltop Loopline Park will be located within the rail corridor, and so that brings with it land ownership and development approval complexities. If because of that, it's looking like the design and DA phase, if that was to consume most of next financial year, we would then look to deliver in its place another place-based renewal for the northern area. That would be in accordance with the priorities listed in the 2020 place-based renewal strategy, which is available on the website. And then finally, we have the Hilltop Loopline Lookout design phase for the project. So that's looking to progress detailed design as well as then firm up what would be the potential land ownership complexities and development approvals again, given that it is interacting with the rail corridor. Like mentioned, the construction phase would be subject to the receipt of grant funding, but through the preparation of a good detailed design and whatever development approvals are required, it would really set us up to do well in that space. So again, as well as the major projects, we do have a number of minor projects spread across the whole network, which are listed there, some being just the continued renewal of our park and sports field furniture, some of which will be dedicated towards the provision of furniture within the Wingelow State Forest. Moving on to roads and transport, which is obviously of a key point of interest for us here in Wingecarribee. Total investment of just over $24 million. The major projects being Old South Road, Station Street and Mosfale Bypass. So Old South Road renewal, total project investment as per the recent council reports on this one is $21 million to be phased across both next financial year and the year after. We would love to do it all in next year, we'd love to do it all within the next couple of months, but unfortunately just given construction methodologies and just simply the scope of work involved, it will be an 18-month construction program. So the project objectives are, I guess, complete renewal of the pavement and driving surface for that 10-kilometre stretch between Merrygang and Almerton Road, as well as some targeted safety improvements where feasible and culvert renewals. Keeping with the controversial theme, we have Station Street upgrades and renewals. That's a sort of a 4-component project where we have the water main renewal, which is currently I guess the construction phase is in progress. We then have the pavement renewal works to the northern side. We have the car park formalisation and extension to the southern extent, which is a fantastic outcome given that it will create an additional 130 parking spaces for the area. And then the reinforcement and protection of the Chameleon Gardens in that northern section as well. So the total investment is $4.3 million with 2.8 of that scheduled for next financial year. Third and final major project is the Mosfale Bypass, which will see a continuation of the design phase. We are hopeful of completing the design phase next financial year, but it is a really complex project that will be subject to still a number, I guess, of specialist investigations. But the objectives of the project are to achieve detailed design for stages 1, 2 and 3 and a complete and approved review of environmental factors, which essentially forms the development approval for the project by next financial year. Again, it's not just the major projects. We are doing a whole range of more minor projects, which will include over $6 million in sort of general road renewal programs spread across both resealing, resheeting, patching and pavement rehabilitation. The priorities of those programs will be driven by first and foremost, our current condition data that was collected by Talus back in 2019. However, it is acknowledged that given the recent weather conditions, a lot of that will no longer necessarily accurately reflect what was on the ground, and so we'll be working really closely with our community, but also our maintenance staff who have been out all across the Shire during the recent rain events. I guess it's also worth noting a continuation of our Footpath Renewal and Upgrade program. I should read Footpath Renewal and Upgrades, apologies. 350 total, pretty much split evenly for renewals and upgrades. It is acknowledged that it would be great, once again, to spend even more in this space. However, we are just working with what we have in terms of the priorities of the network. In terms of the scope for our footpath upgrades, keeping with the theme that was this financial year of looking to provide good connections within some of our villages, we'll be looking to deliver a continuation of the footpath connections identified in the pedestrian access mobility plans for those villages that weren't included this year. And so we're more looking at the Bundanoon and Colo Vale regions for those funds, as well as continuing to pursue grant funding opportunities for more footpath connections throughout the Shire. Onto our stormwater asset class, so just over $3 million forecast for investment in that space, looking to deliver a range of stormwater network renewals and upgrades across the Shire. One of particular note would be the Bowral Golf Course Basin detailed design phase. That project was recommended as one of the outcomes of the floodplain risk management strategy for the area. And so through doing the detailed design, that will enable us to firm up the easement formalizations required for the project, as well as enable us to apply for the construction phase funding through the floodplain management program. Almost there, onto our sewer asset class. So a larger investment in this space of $16.5 million. A number of major projects really focused on our treatment plants. We have our 3 major upgrades across Bowral, Mosfale and Mittagong, each of which will be progressed in their project delivery. Bowral in a large way through what will be hopefully the soon accepted and endorsed construction tender. And so construction will commence for Bowral next year. Detailed design will progress for the other 2 STP upgrades. And then our final asset class of water. So we have just under $11 million forecast for expenditure next financial year. 2 of the main projects can be, I guess, summarised as the Bundanoon Dam to Exeter Reservoir upgrade and renewal in its entirety, as well as the Mosfale to Bowral duplication. So first, just looking at the Mosfale to Bowral duplication, the budget implications for next year aren't too dramatic because it is just the continuation of the design phase, likely through a concept and maybe commencement of detailed design. The purpose of this project is to duplicate the water connection from the Winter Caribou treatment plant to Mosfale for the purpose of meeting the supply required for future demand. The construction budget required will be informed largely by the design strategy adopted. And the final one, and this one is really a summary of a number of projects that stretch between the Bundanoon Dam and Exeter Reservoir. And so they will each be progressed next financial year as well, ranging from the design phase for the renewal of some of the really long stretches of water mains, as well as the upgrade of the pumping stations, and a number of works required for the Bundanoon Dam wall itself. And that brings us to a conclusion of our run through of next year's capital program.
Okay, just a recap on the draft fees and charges for the 22-23 financial year. Just in summary, we have, again, just recapping, increased fees and charges generally by 4.4% and domestic waste by 5%. There are some fees and charges that have not been increased. They are statutory fees and charges, so we will align those to whatever has been prescribed by those prescribed bodies. 38 new fees and charges are being proposed to be introduced for the first time in the 22-23 financial year. 10 fees and charges have been increased by more than 10% from the 21-22 rate, excluding any rounding, and 14 fees and charges have been discontinued. So they're just to better align how we charge to the services we provide. Just a summary of our fees and charges residential. So this takes in, excluding rates, this is what also gets charged as an annual to as annual charges through our revenue policy, but also fees and charges through our domestic waste program. So domestic waste is going up from $454.70 for a 80 litre weekly service, up to $477.40 as an annual charge. As you'll see, the majority of the other charges taking in rounding have incorporated the 4.4% increase. We do like to keep our fees rounded where we can possible, so we've rounded them down to the lowest whole dollar. With the exception of the stormwater charge, which is a fixed charge, and that remains as is. That's a statutory charge prescribed by the Office of Local Government, hasn't been increased since its introduction in 2006-07 financial year. Just to recap some of the drivers that have caused us to put the 4.4% CPI increase into the council paper recommendation. It is aligning with the CPI that has been published by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. This is being reflected on the increased costs of council, and again, if we do not increase our fees and charges, we will be playing catch up in future years. So it's that intergenerational equity. If we don't do it now, eventually we'll have to do it to play catch up. Again, tying into the water and sewer concept, as discussed previously, we're investing $189 million worth of capital works in water and sewer over the next 4 years, and funds will be required to fund some of that future depreciation for the future repayment of those assets. So when those assets are exhausted, we want to make sure we've got adequate funds an adequate funding strategy to fund those when they're due to be replaced after their useful life, talking generations ahead. Also, as a part of the $189 million, we're foreshadowing that we're going to borrow some funds to fund that. And as we're all aware, our financial markets are increasing. So as a part of that, we need to cover the increased cost of interest rates as well. So as a part of incorporating that 4.4%, we anticipate that some of that will be servicing some future loan repayments as well.
Thank you. I'll just give a brief run through of the operational plan and some of the changes and highlights that we've made as a part of that plan. So every year, Council's required to develop a new operational plan. In our revised formatting, we've provided some additional or new information around operating budget by service, capital budget by service, and also resourcing by service. And this is intended to provide more meaningful information to our residents. Our operational plan defines 30 services that Council delivers across the Shire. You can see that in our operational plan, and what I'll do is just provide you with an example of how this will be looking in the draft plan that we're proposing to go on public exhibition. It might be hard to see from the back of the room, but this is the service profile for library services. So it's showing what type of service it is, whether it's providing internal, external service, how it aligns to legislation, our strategic plan, what the core business of that service is. and any supporting plans and strategies that exist for that service, along with budget information for 2 years. Also, staffing resources allocated to that service, along with any assets. And I won't go through the spiel again, but this is an example of the information that's provided for our water and sewer services, followed by waste management. Okay. In terms of key projects from our 22-23 operational plan, what we're proposing is to complete the community and recreational facilities strategy, complete the integrated transport strategy, complete the Barrel Master Plan, undertake a review of the community safety plan, implement Council's greenhouse gas reduction plan, do the lease of the Southern Region Livestock Exchange, investigate and plan for emergency services hub in the Wingecarribee in the medium to long term. Should be one more.
Yeah.
Have you got that one? Review and implement the recommendations from the review of the visitor information services, preparation of a property strategy, develop a place-based framework, increased online services and enable real-time monitoring and processing with council, and update the library management system to enable online reservations and improve customer engagement. Okay, so in terms of next steps, what we are proposing is a public exhibition for 28 days, and opportunities to provide feedback will be via our Your Say Wingecarribee project page, which will include an interactive map with capital projects, plus a frequently asked questions. We'll provide notification to residents via our e-newsletter, plus our community update that's on our website. There'll be media releases and social media posts, and emails will also be sent directly to villages, associations and business chambers. We're also providing an opportunity for residents to come along and talk to staff about what's included in the plan and ask any questions they might have. So we'll be holding sessions at Bundanoon, Robertson, Hilltop and the Civic Centre in Mosfale. The outcomes of the public exhibition will then be reported to Council in June.
Well, thanks very much for everybody's contribution to this. You're all going to have to bear with me, quite simply because you remember that I deferred this matter from the council meeting because I thought it was just a status quo budget and operation plan, and I was keen to see a recalibration across the whole budget to better reflect what the council is being told in its community consultations and the customer service reviews that we have done. So I've got quite a few questions. It's going to take some time, but there's one of me, there's an army of you. I thank the General Manager for the information that's been provided to date, and without further ado, let's get going. I think the CFO, the quarterly financial statement is running a bit late. Are there going to be any surprises in that document that will reflect on the budget, the draft budget?
Just looking at the drafts that have come through, working through the draft process of that at the moment with a view of tabling to May. At this point in time, there's no surprises from what I've observed in the initial stages.
Look, is the budget net of the emergency services levy the government's just announced they're going to pay?
That's correct. The 22-23 draft budget doesn't include a subsidy, the subsidy that the government will be paying to ensure that we're not paying more than what we did in the 2019-20 year. So we'll need to incorporate that into our 22-23 draft budget.
So the money that the government's giving us is still in the draft budget papers.
It's not in the draft budget papers, no.
I was hoping it would have been. You would have had a surplus budget then.
I know we need to include it in there to make it a surplus budget.
So you'll end up with a surplus budget.
Correct.
How much is the government giving us?
I'll just confirm with the Deputy CFO. I'm not across
Yeah,
that
look,
one.
we're in committee, so just
Yep.
feel free to sing out. But I think you need to go to a microphone so the committee who's listening can hear.
343 is what we're receiving in grants. Okay, $343,000.
So you now have a $343,000 surplus budget.
Correct.
I wouldn't go crazy with spending it because the government may not be so generous next year.
Correct.
So that's one bit of good news. Thank you for the further information in relation to employees' expenses. There's no question that superannuation, as a result of claims, which I think has had an airing in other places, has impacted heavily on the council's finances. But my reading of the forward financial plan is you are pulling some of that money back in latter years. Is that right? That
That is correct, yes. There's usually in particular with the claims component of a workers' comp premium, there is a 3-year, lag component, and if we manage our claims correctly, we're anticipating that to drop off and reduce our workers' comp premium.
Look, you don't mind me asking the quick. Thank you. Some of the things I've had, you've answered, and the reality is I have raised things with individuals along the way. On page 82, Stormwater Management Service Charge, you say the charge does not apply to vacant land, but vacant land takes advantage of stormwater management. Is that a statutory thing? You can't do it?
It is statutory. It's in accordance with the legislation that this revenue, that part of the revenue policy mimics what's written in the legislation.
Well, just in a similar vein, I see in the charges and fees that for domestic waste service there is in effect an availability charge, and I know for sure you can charge that. Has there ever been an audit done to ensure that we are?
In my limited, I'd have to take that on notice. In my limited time here, we've spoken about the availability charge being charged, but I don't believe there has been, but it's something that I could investigate, but I'd have to take that on notice, thanks.
And also whether there's ever been an audit done of usage of, silo bins. You can very easily go to Bunnings and buy a 240-litre silo bin and replace it for what the council gives you and not pay. So you're not sure whether we do those kind of audits?
I'm not sure about the audits, but I'm quite confident the routing systems that if a residential property is rated as residential, the default is the default domestic waste charge. So going through your example there, the probability of that happening would be reasonably low because people would be paying for those services.
I wouldn't be as confident.
Okay.
In relation to whether, from experience, that it's very easy to go and buy a 240-litre bin from Bunnings and replace it with your 120 or your 140 that the council gives you, and then the community is paying the differential in dumping. They're just things that I think over time, I'm not suggesting, you come forward, look, we're in committee, so there's no formality, so if you've got a better answer, just come forward.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I can answer that one for you. Yes, our contractors does have the technology on their vehicles to actually pick up the branding on the bins. So bins that you do pick up from Bunnings are branded differently to our current endorsed bins, and a report that is provided back through to council on a monthly basis based upon bins that aren't or flagged as non-approved bins.
Well, that's fabulous. Look, this is a learning experience for me. I only get one go at the budget, and the reality is I'm here until September, and I want to make sure that I've interrogated it as best as I can for the incoming council, whenever that may be. So, you know, some of the questions I might ask are silly, but so be it. I don't think you need to be in a workshop or a briefing to ask a silly question. I have difficulty with the service way we deliver the budget, and I'll address that in my recommendation. The reason being, and I'm pleased you acknowledge that it is in effect a status quo is my word. You would say it reflects this business as usual. But you know, if you go to page 123, customer service, and you know, I'm continually told by residents that the customer service needs improving, and there is an acknowledgement that it is. But if a person who doesn't follow the council was to look at the fact that we're providing about $100,000 less next year for customer service. So there's reasons for all these things, I know, and you can look at the same thing in relation, I think, to consultation. It looks like it's gone down. So I'll deal with that in a recommendation later. I don't agree with only having a 3-year horizon on potholes. I think it was in the castle that they, you know, when the guy was fighting for his house, he said, "You're dreaming." You know, if you think that, and this is not a reflection on you, it's a reality. There's no way in the world this council in the next 3 years is going to address the pothole issue. It's going to take years and years and years, and something has to be done. And I don't agree with the fact that you're in effect pinching the money from engineering services to fund it, but I'll address that in my recommendation, so that I can leave a legacy that can be looked at closer further down the track. I have also a concern that we seem to be just heading off with the animal pound in Boardman Road, and there is not the same level of attention given to the SES compound. And in my view, the SES has to be addressed, and quickly. We have been meeting to try and get money from the state, but you know, we're snug up in bed, and SES volunteers are out there in all kinds of conditions, and they deserve better treatment from this council. So it's not a reflection on you, it's not a reflection on the administration, it's just a view I have, but I'm determined that we will do something for the Mosfale SES. And I'm not going to address that in this recommendation, because if you say that a DA will be lodged within the next month or so. Is that right? 2 weeks. Well, I really think, will it come, before you go to tender, that will come back to council so we can look at options, because it's important in the whole breakup of what we do here, that we, in my view, go to tender for both of the works and individual, because that will potentially give us ammunition to go to government to show them what best value is, and we may have to find some money ourselves, but you know, you just can't ask the and look, you've seen the facilities, I think you're on board. I know the general manager, I know you're all on board, but it's finding the money, but we've got to find the money. But is that how you'd be looking at going to tender in the first instance?
If we have our way with the way this project's going to pan out, there's numerous reasons why we would put them both to market at the same time as one project, in effect, with two separable portions. So it does give us the opportunity to manipulate, if you'd like to say, the projects the way we need to from a delivery sense. But putting them out together, there are numerous efficiencies and reasons why that is the course of action we'd like to take.
So, you know, so that I don't get a whole lot of letters from the Friends of Wingecarribee Animal Pound, I just reiterate what I said in a minute, you know, months ago, that I'm not robbing Peter to pay Paul. They both have to go together and go forward. The facilities at the shelter are just disgraceful, but at the same time, so were the facilities for those very valued volunteers. So it's a priority, I think, both. But I'm not going to build that into the recommendation, because I think I'll still be here to be able to influence where that's up to. I'll be addressing just a couple of little housekeeping things. I would like to see, and this is only a small thing, but more practical litter bins in our four main retail areas. I often come back to Wingecarribee on Sunday afternoons, and you know, I might go to a pub in Barrel, have dinner, but the garbage tins are overflowing. That's not a reflection on the officers or the people who empty them. It's a reflection on what the council has there for people to put their rubbish in. And I think that these are just little things that can make a big difference, but I'm not suggesting you head off straight away. It's just something to keep under your belt, and also a permanent solution to water pressure problems at New Berrima. Sorry, Graham, but okay. Well, I'm just raising it in the recommendations, because I think what you're doing now is not environmentally up to scratch to keep going. I'm not criticising you. You addressed an issue, but I think it needs a permanent solution. There was no, I forget what you call it, the unrestricted current ratio calculations I couldn't find in the forward financial plan. Am I wrong or right?
That's correct, but we can incorporate it into the version that goes on public exhibition.
I read everything that I get, so that's great. And I have difficulty with the linkages between the long-term financial plan and the community strategic plan. And you know, you allow 3.5% for the next 10 years for interest rates. You know, you need to be a crystal ball. You're not going to address that. But you know, you said that we'd be spending, I think, $189 million in the next few years on sewer and water.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. How many years is that over?
Over 4 years.
That's a massive investment.
Correct.
And I totally agree with the fact that you're going to increase water and sewer charges by 4.4%. And even that 4.4%, in my back of envelope calculations, will not be enough to cash fund depreciation of the new Bowral water treatment plant.
I believe that's why we are going out to loan funds for these upgrade works as a part of the 4 years that we've projected out for. So going forward, I believe we need to come up with a financial strategy to look at what the next one's going to be in the next 30, 50 years, depending on the useful life of that asset. So we'll come up with a funding strategy to bring
but whether
back
you
to
fund
council.
it by loan or cash, you've still got to provide for depreciation under the law.
That's correct, yes.
And even the 4.4% won't be enough.
Yeah.
So unless we are realistic, you're 100% right, it'll come back to bite.
Yes.
And, you know, I think it is not a huge amount. I think it works out 16 cents a day to provide a bit more funding over the years. The I don't understand the balanced budget. If you go to say to the general fund, not consolidated funds, on page 218. Starts on 218,
Yep.
But if you go to page 220, the net increase or decrease in cash entitlements over the 12-month period is $1.8 million. Now, from our discussions the other day, I understand what you're saying there. Some of it's funded from reserves and the like, but for a resident, they've got no hope.
Yes.
When you're saying it's a balanced budget, can we, in the future, can we look at consolidating the 5 million just to show that that's not eating into that 5 million? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you'd like to separately disclose the $5 million to show that it's there as a part of the cash
Well, I would hope
position.
the 5 million will grow because, you know, the value of money is such that you need to have the rainy day money.
Yes.
And the way this council used to do it, I'll repeat, I think it was sneaky. The way they just pulled money in from reserves to balance. And that was something the Finch report came up without me interfering. He didn't use the words I used, but and that was endorsed by the audit committee. So I think it's the way to go. So I'd be, well, you can't say you've got a balanced budget now under your scenarios. You've got a surplus budget.
Correct.
Yeah, of over 200,000, I think Damien.
300.
So, yeah, but the council needs discipline to ensure that that money is not spent because it's not recurrent money. It won't be available next year. So this is all very complex, and it's easy for people to criticise the community strategic plan and the complexity of it, but I think the presentations today show the amount of work that this organisation is ploughing ahead with, and I think the community should be very proud of what this staff are achieving. But I think that's about all the questions that I had, but I'm not going to move the officer's recommendation because I want to make sure that it's clear what my intent is for future budgets, and given the opportunity to, I'm not saying I know everything, but to try and set this place in a right direction, my recommendation is more complex and longer. So I'm going to move council in. A lot of it is your recommendations, but I've built into it to put it beyond doubt what I'm trying to achieve, and some of it won't come back before September, so that I'm not saying that the council staff wouldn't do it, but a new council may have different ideas, and I just want to lay a foundation to move the place forward. One, council endorses the draft 22-23 operational plan and budget, revenue policy, capital works program, and draft 2022-23 to 2031-32 long-term financial plan, as set out in attachments 1 and 3 for public exhibition for 28 days from 6 May to 3 June 2022. Does that give you enough time?
I'll ask the CFO.
Look, we're in committee, so I am happy to work with you all to ensure
just if we could, I guess we've got 28 days. The date of the 6th of May may be a bit of a push, so we might look at excluding the dates. I don't think we need to explicitly include the dates in the recommendation.
for public association for 28 days as determined by the General Manager. Okay, take out the 6 May, all right? Yeah, because you've obviously got to build in your 4.4 into everything.
Correct.
And which is going to give you an even better financial surplus.
Correct.
But I don't think it's going to be a fortune.
It's quite small in that aspect. So the majority of it is in water and sewer. So.
Yeah. Okay. Council endorses public exhibition an updated draft 2022-23 charges and fees schedule for 28 days, incorporating a revised indexation for non-statutory fees and charges of 4.4% to align with the March 22 Sydney All Groups Consumer Price Index. 3, following public exhibition, the draft 2022-23 operational plan and budget, revenue policy, capital works program, draft 2022-23 fees and charges, and draft 2022-23-2031-32 long-term financial plan be presented to council for adoption in June 2022. Look, I'm confusing myself now. Look, let's start again. I was playing with your original recommendation, then I changed my mind and started again, but I didn't remind myself I changed my mind and started again before I came in here. So I'm sorry, but this is very, very important in my view. So I would move 1. So you can scrap everything I've said and start again. I've got to read it out, unfortunately. That's what I gave you earlier. So you should have. We're in committee. You should have sung out and said you changed all that. 1. The General Manager amend the draft 2022-23 operational plan and budget, revenue policy, capital works program, and draft 2022-23-2031-32 long-term financial plan to reflect the following changes. A, draft 2022-23 fees and charges schedule be amended to incorporate a revised indexation for non-statutory fees and charges of 4.4% to align with the March 2022 Sydney All Groups Consumer Price Index. B, draft 2022-23 revenue policy be amended to incorporate a revised indexation for discretionary annual charges of 4.4% to align with the March 2022 Sydney All Group's Consumer Price Index. C, add the following action to the operational plan. Prepare a plan with full costings for the refurbishment of back office, including but not limited to office design, including office furnishings for the Civic Centre, including replacing windows, carpet, painting and interior, and a review for office design layout to provide a further report once fully scoped with the budgetary impact for council consideration. I'm going a bit further than I went at the last meeting. This has to be addressed. D, incorporate the financial implications of these changes into the draft budget for long-term financial plan. 2, the General Manager be delegated authority to place the draft 2022-23 operational plan and budget, revenue policy, capital works program and draft 2022-23 and 2031-32 long-term financial plan, including unrestricted current ratio calculations for public exhibition for 28 days, noting that the community information sessions for Hilltop will be rescheduled from 10 to 19 May, and for the Civic Centre Mosfale from 12 May to 24 May. Following exhibition, the draft 22-23 operational plan, budget, revenue policy and capital works program, draft 2022-23 charges and fees and draft 2022-23-2031-32 long financial plan be presented to Council for adoption in June 2022. It be noted that the General Manager advised that it is impractical to recast the budget until the new structure is finalised, and the General Manager be requested to provide this information in the third quarter of 2022-2023 financial year. And I'm saying that so for Council's consideration of its next budget, there will be comparisons, so that it just won't come cold. So this year's will have to relate to what is in the budget, recalculated. A further report be provided to Council to set out a comprehensive program of service reviews that ensures best value for the community with a methodology that includes community and stakeholder input. That is because so many residents ask me whether the community gets value for their rate dollar. I can't answer the question. And I don't think that question can be answered until the new structure is in place. 6, the General Manager provide a report on the introduction of an efficiency gain of up to 2% to fund community priority projects in the 2023-24 financial year, and that the report be provided to Council on the methodology to calculate the quantum of the fund. What I'm saying there is there's more than just wages and salaries in that, but the Council has many fixed costs. But if we're going to get fair income, we're going to get fair income. 7, reports be provided to Council, if considered appropriate by the General Manager, on A, the provision of more practical litter bins in the 4 main town centres, and B, a permanent solution to the water pressure problems in Berrima. I know it goes on a bit, but there's a method why I'm doing this and putting it in writing, so it's very clear what the expectation is. And I will declare that carried. In relation to more practical litter bins in the 4 main centres, I'm not suggesting that we preempt what's happening now with the barrel studies or anything like that. We just need to move quickly to get litter off the streets, and so that this Shire looks. I'm not suggesting you stick solo bins there either, but that's look at the options. Yeah. Okay, that I think finishes committee of the whole. So I would move that council, the committee goes back in, the council resume at 5:09 and declare that carried. General Manager, can you please report proceedings of Committee of the Whole?
Thank you, Mr. May. So in the Committee of the Whole, the Council received an update on the Community Facilities and Recreational Strategy, and it was resolved that Council, in relation to item 9.1, that Council receives and notes the contents of this report, and that 2, a further report be provided to Council to endorse the draft Community and Recreational Facility Strategy for public exhibition. During Committee of the Whole, item 9.2, sorry, slow down.
Let's do one at a time. I actually think I moved that the officer's recommendation, I changed the officer's recommendation, that Mr. Treadwell be thanked for his presentation and the officer's recommendation be adopted. Oh, look, it's new territory for a lot of people, what we're doing tonight, but I think...
Sorry, apologies.
No. So, and I will, if you got that, we need to call that up. Oh, okay. Declare that carried.
Item 9.2 was considered, and that was the draft operational plan and budget, and the recommendation that the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole be adopted as follows. The General Manager amend the draft 2022/23 operational plan and budget, revenue policy, capital works program, and draft 22/23-2031/32 long-term financial plan to reflect the following changes. A, draft 2022/23 fees and charges schedule be amended to incorporate a revised indexation for non-statutory fees and charges of 4.4%, to align with the March 2022 Sydney All Groups Consumer Price Index. B, draft 2022/23 revenue policy be amended to incorporate a revised indexation for discretionary annual charges of 4.4% to align with the March 2022 Sydney All Groups Consumer Price Index. C, add the following action to the operational plan. Prepare a plan for the full costings of the refurbishment of the back office, including but not limited to office design, including office furnishings of the Civic Centre, including replacing windows, carpet, painting the interior, and review of the office design layout, and provide a further report once fully scoped with the budgetary impact for Council consideration. D, incorporate the financial implications of these changes into the draft budget and long-term financial plan. 2, the General Manager be delegated authority to place the draft 2022/23 operational plan and budget, revenue policy, capital works program, and draft 22/23-2031-32 long-term financial plan, including unrestricted current ratio calculations, for public exhibition for 28 days, noting that the community information sessions for Hilltop will be rescheduled from the 10th of May to the 19th of May, and for the Civic Centre in Mosfale from the 12th of May to the 24th of May. 3, following public exhibition, that the draft 2022/23 operational plan and budget, revenue policy, capital works program, draft 22/23 fees and charges, and draft 22/23-2031/32 long-term financial plan be presented to Council for adoption in June 2022. It is noted that the General Manager advised that it is impractical to recast the budget until the new structure is finalised, and that the General Manager be requested to provide this information in the third quarter of 2022/23 financial year. 5, a further report be provided to Council to set out a comprehensive program of service reviews that ensures best value for the community, with the methodology that includes community and stakeholder input. 6, The General Manager provide a report on the introduction of an efficiency gain of up to 2%. Sorry, yes? Apologies.
Efficiency gain, of up to 2%, please. Not there.
Oh. I can't read that from here. I'll just start again, Olivia. 6, the General Manager provide a report on the introduction, of an efficiency gain of up to 2% to fund community priority projects in the 2023/24 financial year, and that a report be provided to Council on a methodology to calculate the quantum of the fund. And 7, reports be provided to Council if considered appropriate by the General Manager on A, the provision on more practical litter bins in the 4 main centres. We just need to add the. And B, a permanent solution to the water pressure problems in Berrima. New Berrima, apologies.
Got the Olivia?
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
No, sorry, I would move that recommendation to Committee of the Whole and declare it carried. Do you want to adjourn just for a couple of minutes? Anyone who wants to go from the staff can go? Or? Okay. Next item is 9.3, Christmas festivities feedback. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. Ms. Lidgard will introduce this item.
Thank you. This report was deferred from the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 20th of April so that itemised expenditure on Christmas festivities funded by Council across the Shire during December 2021 could be provided to this meeting. A breakdown of the expenditure of funds has been included on pages 246 and 247 of the agenda. Council allocated just over $102,000 to Christmas. The funding allocation in the Council report is provided for the following: funding to 13 village associations for Christmas activities, the delivery, installation of 3 Christmas trees in Mosfale Barrel and Mittagong, and the installation of 3 trees in Robertson, Bundanoon and Berrima. The design and printing of Christmas flags, which will be completed by the end of the financial year. Security camera for the Barrel Christmas tree, Civic Centre Christmas decorations, light up the Christmas tree events, and school student vouchers in Mosfale Barrel and Mittagong, plus lighting in Leighton Gardens, Mosfale, plus the provision of sound equipment for Mosfale Community Christmas carols. This report recommends that Council continues to provide additional funding for the Christmas celebrations across the Shire as a part of the 2022-23 budget.
Thank you. Look, thank you for providing the financial information. I was pretty shocked to see how much Christmas trees cost, but the Council went through a procurement process. But having said that, I just want the community to know what these things cost. The design and printing of the flags at $18,000, you're going to need money next year. Now you've got them to put them up. And by the time you deal with occupational health and safety and the like, that's going to cost as well. The lighting up of the Christmas trees by the school students, I think it was a great idea, but it was expensive. And I just wonder whether that money can be better used. So I want to put this out to community consultation so that the community can see. No doubt there'll be more questions asked, which I look forward to, in relation to the $41,855. But when people go through it, like I did, they will see that the procurement processes were followed. Christmas trees are expensive. But whether the community wants to go through that process again, I know there's some in the community who would like to see Christmas lights in commercial areas, but with daylight saving, most kids are asleep by the time the lights come on. It's a difficult matter. The thing I think that people really enjoyed was the lighting in Corbett Gardens, and I think they've got ideas for bigger and better things this year. But Christmas isn't just about barrel. So in relation to this matter, I'm not going to move the officer's recommendation. I would move that council provides $103,500 funding for Christmas celebrations across the Shire as part of the 2022-23 Drought Budget. 2, funding continue to be provided on the same basis as in 2021 for activities for village associations, including Medway. 3, an amount of $15,000 from the funding be provided for the Corbett Gardens Festival of Lights, subject to council receiving appropriate recognition for the use of the funds. Pardon me. And 4, the General Manager enter into discussions with Business Southern Highlands and the Mosfale and Rural Chamber of Commerce in relation to the utilisation of $42,000 prior to commencing community consultation on the matter. I declare that carried. It may very well be the 42,000 will be more, because I don't know how much it's going to cost to put your flags up. That could be quite expensive, Mr. Bray, couldn't it? So, we've got plenty of time, but I just think it's important that the community has a say. The villagers have spoken. They want to maintain what they had, and I think we've got to include Medway in that. But when it comes to the 3 main towns, well, let's find out what the chambers are saying and then put it to community consultation. Next report is 9.4, the Penrose Community Hall. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. So the Acting Director, Mr. Bray, will introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Penrose Community Hall Expression of Interest Report. The purpose of this report is to inform Council of the expression of interest process undertaken for the design and construction of the new Penrose Community Hall and to seek Council endorsement of the 4 shortlisted companies to progress to a selected tender process. The new hall is to be built at the Penrose Recreational Park alongside the community tennis courts, the Oval and the Old Hall. The project is funded by the Bushfire Economic Recovery Fund, which includes state and federal government contributions as well as contributions from Council. The total budget for the project is $2.1 million. In addition, the Penrose Community Association have made in-kind contributions valued at $245,000. From the 23rd of March and the 12th of April, the expression of interest was advertised through the New South Wales Government Public Works Advisory Tender Portal. Following an open expression of interest process, the evaluation team reviewed the expression of interests against mandatory criteria of experience, work performance, and financial capacity. Other criteria included the use of in-kind contributions and the use of local suppliers. The experience of the applicants was reviewed during the non-price assessment and was satisfactory. Consultants' performance reports and referees were checked and confirmed that the recent performance of the applications was satisfactory. Based on the evaluation process, the evaluation team considers that the 4 highest scoring applicants have adequate capacity and capability to be included in the tender panel for the design, development and construction of the new hall. And the mix of applicants will provide an excellent competitive tender process. Thank you.
In relation, look, I've got no problem with the recommendation. Just so that I'm aware, Public Works Advisory are the project managers, but the council is going to tender on everybody's behalf.
Can I call Clint to ask that question, please? Clint's been more involved in the
sorry,
project at a ground level.
Mr May, the Public Works Advisory part of New South Wales are providing a governance function across the project. The actual project manager is part of the Penrose Community Association.
But who will the tender be with? Wingecarribee Shire Council?
No, the tender will be with the Penrose Community Association.
I think it's unrealistic.
Yeah, so through Mr May, so the project has a project control group that is made up of council representatives. So Mr McAllister's on that. PWA, Public Works Advisory, are also on that project control group, as well as representatives of the Penrose Community Association. One of their members has a professional background in this area. The reason for bringing forward the report is that council has committed via resolution $400,000 towards the project, and therefore we've taken the project through a proper procurement process with the tender.
I understand, but at the end of the day, who will the successful tenderer be entering into a contract with? Look, if you don't know, we can take it on notice and can be another report because we've got time on our side. But look, I just think it is unrealistic to expect, in effect, volunteers to take on that liability.
Mr Mayor, my understanding at this stage it will be the Penrose Community Association, as they are the principal in the funding deed associated with regards to this project.
Can I add number 3 to this recommendation, that the General Manager provide advice to Council? What's the wording? Provide advice to Council on the governance issues associated with the contract. I declare that carried. That's not a reflection on anybody. It's not a reflection on the Penrose Group or the council staff. It's just trying to take a practical, realistic approach. I know that Public Works Advisory, assisting, and there's, residents assisting, and I see there's substantial in-kind assistance, but whether the council should leave it to individuals who are aligned to a community organisation take on that liability is another question, so we can get some advice.
Yep, through Mr May, we'll clarify and also clarify the role of PWA in the project control group, the PCG. Thank you.
But in doing that, if you could make it very clear that we're not trying to cause a problem, we're just trying to make sure that they're relaxed in the process. Okay, and the final item, 9.5, Project 24, the IPART review of domestic waste management charges.
Yep, through Mr May, so the Acting Manager Business Services, Mr McAllister, will introduce this item. Thank you.
Mr May, General Manager, this report seeks council endorsement for the Project 24 joint response to IPART's review of the domestic waste management services. Camden and Campbelltown City Councils, along with neighbouring local government areas of Wingecarribee and Wallandilly Shire Councils, are referred to as the Project 24 Councils. Wingecarribee Shire Council, although being a member of the Canberra Region Joint Organisation of Councils, elected to partner with the Project 24 Councils for the procurement of the disposal of waste services. This was due to their proximity, similar waste disposal contract expiry dates, and the fact that Wingecarribee Shire Council is subject to the domestic waste levy. The response positions that Council is best placed to determine the domestic waste management charges based upon the service levels that are required to meet the community needs and also the New South Wales EPA targets. The report opposes benchmarking due to the difficulty in obtaining comparable council data due to the individual circumstances that differ across local government areas that impact the costs. The report also opposes the proposed benchmark, waste peg of 1.1% for the 22-23 financial year, as it is below CPI.
Apologies. I wouldn't want to be rude. I just said to the General Manager, councils need some autonomy. A 1.1% benchmark increase, I would imagine that would get eaten in disposal charge, the state government charges in the transfer process. Anyhow, look, in relation to item 9.5, I would move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 287 of the business paper and declare it carried. Is there any other business? Declare the meeting closed and thank everyone for their attendance.